I hope everyone is okay with that. Ahmed is okay recorded. So welcome to the Agile Dialogue, Mrs. Sagar. This afternoon we have Ahmed. Ahmed has been kind enough to join us to talk about the Agile Fluency and how he's been using it for professional coaching. I am so interested in understanding more about this other than what I know of Agile Fluency. So he's going to be taking questions at the end of the session. But what I'm going to be asking is that for your questions, please put the letter Q in front of it so that we know that's a question for Ahmed, and he will look at them at the end of the session. However, it's doing a very interactive session. So if there is anything of your questions that you can address there and there, he will address them. If not, we will leave it till the end of the session. And we want everybody to have a nice time and learn from this. So I'm going to hand over to Ahmed to walk us through. And another thing he has asked me to mention, which I nearly forgot, is that you're going to be making use of your mobile phone because there's going to be some polling that you need to do. So please have your mobile phone next to you just for the polling. So Ahmed, over to you.
Yes, thank you. Well, I'm super excited here. And yes, so we will be using Mentimeter. So if you can have a phone or an iPad nearby and just log on to menti.com, menti.com, and keep that handy. And we'll keep some of the interactivity. There may be a quiz. There may not be prizes, but there will be a quiz at the end as well. So that being said, I'm going to hop in right into the presentation because there's a lot to cover, and your interest will also help me gauge where I need to go deeper or keep it at a surface level. But it is an introductory session, and I hope you'll find value in that. So I'm going to share my screen, and let's see if I can kick this off. All right, does everybody see my screen? All right, cool. So we are going to talk about the Agile Fluency model today and how it applies to team-based coaching, and very, very impactful team-based coaching. So even though I am going to be presenting the Agile Fluency model, it's not just the model, it's a suite of things. There's multiple tools, methods, and techniques included in the Agile Fluency suite. So I would rather call it a suite rather than a model. And it is something that Diana Larson and James Shores created. Now, as Kemi has invited me to come in here, I wanted to set the stage a little bit about why me, or where do I come from in this picture. So I got engaged with the Agile Fluency community several years ago. And I was in a place where I was hearing things like Agile is dead. And you probably are hearing that again. Every few cycles, it keeps on coming back. Agile is dead. And I said, all right, well, that sucks. Now, what do I need to find? So there are a few things that have restored my faith in Agile or agility. And one of those things was the Agile Fluency project. The other thing was Scrum Plop, which is a pattern libraries of programs. Whole different story, but there are a few things that restored my faith in Agile and agility. So I've been involved from day one. I was the very first licensee of the diagnostic, one of the first, in the very first batch. And I'm also a trainer in the Agile Fluency game, so I can license people to become trainers in that. That is kind of the set context. And on top of that, I want to say that I find extreme value in it. And I want to also address the elephant in the room, that it is not me trying to sell you something, but it's more about how I apply this in all the day-to-day coaching I do, and how it has given me a leg up on other people, and how you possibly can also take advantage of that. So on that being said, let's do a quick check-in. So this is where I'm going to ask you to bring out your phones and join Menti with this code on top, 860426. So you can kindly put in the code 860426. It should be shared on screen as well. And in one word, describe how you're feeling today. In one word. Oh, that's a lot of words. I wish I could translate that. I have no fluency in additional languages. right? Curious, energetic, and enthusiastic, busy, driven, awesome, stressed. Yes, I hear you. Intrigued. So I'm seeing that we have, Kemi, how many people do we have in the call now? You're on mute.
Yeah. Without you, we've got 27 people.
Okay, so we have, I see 18 people on the Menti poll. So this is also a quick tech test, right? So I probably would like to see at least 25, 23, 25 to say that, this tool is working. But I'm seeing, so some of the larger words are multiple people have said the same answer. And, I see other languages popping up, which is wonderful, which makes me curious about the next question. All right, so I think this is good enough. 22 out of 27, 28 is still a good, decent one. But if you can all participate, that will make me really happy. And this will be really useful. So the next question I have for you is, where are you joining us from? So look at your phones and let's see what's popping up. Toronto is representing. Munich, Waterloo, Toronto, Ontario, Mexico. Awesome, welcome. Boston, Mississauga, and where else? Barrie, is that how you say it? Barrie, Canada? Beirut, yeah, we saw Hisham coming in from Lebanon. That is awesome. So a lot of Toronto, but then we have also some folks that are joining us from other countries, which is wonderful. All right, last question. What do you hope to learn from today's session? So this will help me understand what you want to gauge and how I can tune it to your needs. What do you hope to learn from today's session? New coaching skills. Okay, well, you're in the right session if you're learning from me. Effectively explain Agile Fluency and apply. Yeah. More about Agile. Agile pitfalls. Maybe, maybe not. How do I apply Agile Fluency to my teams? Yes. Coaching skills, coaching techniques, how to use Agile Fluency for coaching. Intro, yes, this is an introductory session. And how is it different from others? We may not go into deep compare and contrast, and there's a reason why. Before the, ask me, you're gonna have fun. Diana and James, they love questions. Come, this session is a good prep session for that. Definitely bring your amazing questions to them. How to implement Agile methodology into admin projects. Not sure what an admin project would be, but I'm curious. Maybe this is something we can go a little deeper on Q&A. Practical coaching techniques, make connections. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, I'm going to switch over to the presentation. Let me know if you guys can still see it. Can everybody see the presentation?
Yeah.
If you can give me, all right, awesome. Okay, so let's start with the big picture. Now, all of these things have a purpose at the end. Agile is a mean, it's not the end, right? So we want to have everything aligned for purpose. Like, what is fit for purpose for an organization? What are the goals? What are we trying to do? Well, how are you serving your customer? How are you serving your stakeholders, your internal customers? So you have to have something that you're looking forward to. For example, in our language, in the Agile Fluency language, you say, well, what is the goal? What is the capability goal? So some of you may have seen this before. So the very first thing you need to ask for an Agile Fluency improvement cycle is, what is the capability goal? And you'll see this thing pop up a few more times. And once you've articulated what that capability goal looks like, you need to find out where you are. You need to find out where you are in terms of your organizational needs. So like, what business needs are driving this capability goal? What are the things that your teams need to do? And we're going to bring this back again. This is a very team-focused model. And what has happened, and you'll see this picture, I'm not going to go into right now, but you'll see 4 different labels in the middle: focusing, delivering, optimizing, and strengthening. And we find that each of these zones are suitable for a certain type of team and unsuitable for others. So finding out where you need to be is half the battle. And how do you bring value back to the organization? So not all of them will apply to you. And this is why we don't need to complete the whole journey down. So it's not a maturity model from top to bottom. But then where is the need and where do you need to be? We'll go further into that again later, but let's go back to the capability goal. So now you need to assess where the team or group of teams are currently. And one of the tools in the Agile Fluency suite is the Agile Fluency diagnostic. And I've done a lot of assessments. And I find this to be the current state of the art assessment because it's crowdsourced. It's amplifying the language of the team so that it can be translated in a way that makes sense in business. So once you find out what the current state is, what you need to do next is to create a performance target. Now there's time frames involved here as well. And then initiate those practice steps, those baby steps that leads towards that next performance target. And every time your capability goal will shift. And this is why it's cyclical rather than a one-time thing. And from there, you want to hit that capability goal. So it's not the other way. So there's a little bit of a paradigm shift. And where does this come from? It comes from the improvement kata pattern from Mike Rother. And if you don't know about Mike Rother, I suggest you look him up. Very useful for your coaching, very useful for your skills. He's the author of the Toyota Kata. He's also the creator of the improvement kata pattern. Very much applicable in what we do and how it makes things more useful. Now, this is how we describe it in Agile Fluency world of things. Now, this may look very busy, but it's essentially the same thing I showed you in the previous slide, which is what is the capability goal, how are you assessing it, and what are the loops, what are the feedback loops that you create to exploit those opportunities. So I'm not going to make you read the whole thing. I do want to dive into the actual model. All right, so the Agile Fluency model, what came to be, this is now coming into 9-10 years now, but this came from a need to have something that describes practices, breaks them down in practices that are useful and not are tied to a framework, married to one framework versus another, pitting one against another. And how can we create it inclusively and how can we create it positively? What happened next was, now Diana and James have been practicing Agile before, well, it was even called Agile. So this was their core practice. And with that, they took it to other practitioners. And we've had we were fortunate to have Martin Fowler, Mary Poppendick. I mean, who's who name of people that joined in, road tested it. And what resulted was, over multiple iterations, we were able to, or the Institute Agile Fluency Project was able to codify a progression of hundreds of teams, or what it looks like and how it matches with the reality. And then how can we distinguish these things that are still useful in clusters, what we call zones. So the zones, the ones that I showed you, the 4 labels, are like bus zones. And I'll talk to it again a little bit later. But each zone has its benefits and challenges. One zone is not better than the other. And some people look at the map and see the arrows and say, well, it looks like it's a maturity model. It is not a maturity model because each one may be appropriate for a different type of team. And there's a way to separate that out. Finally, we want to distinguish ourselves as coaches and consultants that we're not going in with a checklist and having the client live up to our expectations, or our teams to live up to somebody else's expectations, but rather looking at thorough discovery and looking for patterns, and based on good practices and good heuristics, find out ways to build on their own strengths. What results from that is better leadership conversations that focus on needs and benefits. Now, I mentioned that it's like a bus map. Now, bus map, where if you're commuting to work, now we're all in the pandemic, we're all staying at home, and hopefully things will open up again soon enough. But imagine you going to commute, or you're going to get your groceries, or you need to take your kid to school, or your kids need to go somewhere. And you want to optimize that path so you're not wasting unnecessary time and investment. So where you need to go, this defines what path you need to take. And the metaphor of somebody needs to buy the ticket is also very much alive. And that will be the leadership conversation. So the best way to look at this is not as a maturity model, but rather as a bus map. Okay, I am going to stop here because I think I forgot to share my audio. And I will reshare again. Right, just to take a quick pause, because I know Zoom has a quirk. All right, I'm going to share back again. Hopefully you guys can still see. What do you guys see?
Yes, where you have the model.
Okay, awesome. Perfecto. All right, so we have, this is the model again. Each path, so say a organization or a team has decided to go from the pre-agile way of working to focusing. There are certain investments that need to be made. There are certain practices that you can observe whether they're alive or not to say, well, which zone they are in just by observation. And you can also discover what is the appropriate zone for that team. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to play the whole 10-minute video for you. I'm going to play a short clip that tells about the journey of a team that needs to be in delivering and why this mechanism works. So it's only short 3 minutes, but let me play that video for you, and then we'll come back and build upon it. And as a homework, I invite you to watch the whole 10-minute video, which is jam-packed with a lot of useful information. So I'm going to move ahead and play the video now.
So instead of thinking it as a progression of where we want to get to the end, we think of it as a ride on a bus, as if you were going through different bus zones. And you would always get off at the one that gives you the value that you are looking for. So we start the model with just the idea that an organization has a group of effective individual contributors. They are working on their work separately. They are trying to integrate it at the end. That goes as it often does. And they really know that they need to move those individual contributors into a team-based way of working. And so they go through a team culture shift. This team culture shift, which we call focus on value, provides a number of benefits to the organization. It allows them to see the progress that the team is making from the business perspective and to redirect the work as needed and to know that always the next thing the team is going to produce is going to be the next most valuable thing. So in order to provide those benefits, the team has some things that they're going to need in order to really become a team. They need coaching to be a team. They need some workspace to do teamwork in. They need clear business priorities communicated to them so that they can always work on the next most valuable thing. They need a learning and improvement process so they can keep getting better, and they need to keep their work visible. All of that requires some investment on part of the organization and can take anywhere from 2 to 6 months. We call focus on value the Agile fundamentals, and very often those can be reached by various methodologies: basic Scrum, Kanban, Lean IT, sometimes even a very well-designed ad hoc methodology. And that can be adequate for many organizations. It can be a very nice fit, but not for all organizations. Other organizations need to move on and go through a team skills shift to our next bus zone that we call deliver value. Deliver value provides a lot of benefit to the organization. It allows them to release at will, to ship on the market pull or the market cadence, as we call it. The idea that anytime the customers can take something new, it's right there ready for them, so the business captures some monetary value back often also. And this way of working helps to reveal obstructions early before they become big problems and can be fixed while they're small. To get those benefits, the teams have some needs. They need training to really get them to engineering excellence. They may need some technical mentoring to help supplement that training. They need some patience with the learning curve that will affect their productivity as their productivity then takes a surge forward. And then finally, they may need the inclusion of DevOps or user experience folks to help them do their work. We call this Agile sustainability because this allows the team to spend more time on building features, less time on fixing things, and their maintainability of their output tends to be much better. And it can take anywhere from 5 to 18 months of real focused effort to get there. And extreme programming practices, software craftsmanship, the ideas from clean code all can contribute here. But this still may not be enough.
All right. So we're going to move on to the, so that was just a short clip of the video. And you can have a team that is in delivering zone, and that may be appropriate. You don't need to go any further. If some outside conditions change, some business needs change, those are the ones that will require you to say, hey, maybe we need to shift this team to another zone. But you need to get proficient. You need to build fluency in that particular zone. And what we found, and this is another busy slide, is that there is a patterns and there's themes and there's time frames that align with these zones and what they provide you with. So it's, instead of following one standard method, one framework, and everybody line up, which we find becomes very ineffective very quickly. How do we build that custom tailored approach? Now, some might ask, why custom tailor? Why can't we just standardize? Why can't we just have a BOC? Why can't we just have a body of knowledge and just get everybody lined up? Well, it can work in some places, but if you are really in an agile space where you want to lead the market, custom tailoring is going to be essential to your coaching skills and coaching practice and your team's benefit. And the reason we say that, because when you go to shop, even one size fits all clothes don't fit everybody. So, this is the notion, we say there's a product called one size fits all, and you find out that you're outgrown it, or it's too small, it's over-invested, or it's underwhelming. So there is a need to find out, how do we do this? How do we do this for our own teams? So the 3 questions I want to pose to you is, well, does your company make software as a central business? And I usually ask people to put it in their chat, but because we have a lot of material to cover, I may just guide through this whole level of questions myself. If you think of a team, and you find out that that team is operating in software, but the organization is not really a software company, then you may not, anything beyond delivering zone may not be suitable for that team. However, if you are a software company, not that your primary product is software, you are a tech firm, not an insurance firm, not a bank, you are a tech firm, then all 4 zones can apply to you. Now, there is a gray area where companies are trying to become digitally transformed organizations. But more often than not, we find that larger corporations tend to be in the place where software is not their core product or they're central to their business. Second question is and what Agile Fluency zone do you aspire to? Now, each of these zones have a snappy, Twitter feed kind of headline. So focusing is where you can do fine if you have individual contributors. You have people who know what they are doing. They can work right. They don't need to work too closely, And you could get away with one product owner or one product manager supporting multiple teams. But then as they evolve, their needs need to evolve. So what is it that you aspire to be? And based on their aspirations, you'll figure out what zone really fits you. Now, third question, which is I find the most interesting one. How much time is your organization willing to invest in an agile adoption and agile transformation? If they're patient, what I mean by saying that, companies are going through their third transformation, their fourth transformation, the fifth transformation, because the senior leadership, their patience becomes, they become impatient at one point. So, well, where is my return of investment? What we found through the model, that there is a clear-cut connection between the zone that you could achieve for a team and the time that is required as concentrated effort. From day one, you could have a team that's an optimizing zone. From day one, you will build the practices for them, or you will create conditions for them to build fluency in those practices, but it will take a long while. 4 to 8 months, easily you can achieve focusing. 6 months to 2 years, we found this model to clearly indicate that this is where a team can become a delivering team. 1 year to 5 years, and typically more on the later side when you really want to become an optimizing team. So this is just like, a more surface level answer, but definitely there are resources for you to go deeper. There are training programs, but this is kind of the gist of why there is a need of custom tailoring. So I'm going to pause here to see if any questions have popped up that may be necessary to address right now versus the Q&A later. Kemi, do you see any questions that are popping up that may need answering now?
Not at this moment, but maybe people might have some questions that they haven't typed in the chat box just yet.
Sure. And you're welcome to type them in so that you don't forget. If some questions say, hey, that didn't quite make sense, or can you tell me how that works in real life? I'm happy to answer that question. So again, introductory, I'm trying to see if I can give you enough taste test that you can walk away with a good idea and see what the next step forward for you would be. So I've used this.
Sorry, go ahead. David has a question. He says, sure. I'm curious why the word zones instead of levels or maturity.
Yeah, so we are trying to use the word zones because we're borrowing that from the bus zone analogy. So if you have a public transportation structure where you have bus zones, or look at a subway path, the blue line, red line, there is a structure that you have to build for people to find their own way where they need to go. So the zones make sense for us because we find that from day one, we can find that this is a team that needs to go to, say, focusing zone. So that means that I'm not going to create conditions for them to practice on something that may be overinvestment for them. Versus levels and maturity will require you, hey, you are level 1, now you need to go to level 2, now you go to level 3, now you need to go to level 4. For them, it is a maturity scale. So we actively stay away from that language. And within each zone, there is a level of maturity. So imagine, maturity happens with age, but fluency in a zone happens with deliberate practice. And if you are practicing, you are going to get mature as well. So there's a level of maturity within each zone, but we try to stay away from the language that says, nope, optimizing is always going to be better than delivering, and delivering is always going to be better than focusing. We're going to say, not necessarily. Your team may be fine in focusing, depending on what the needs are. I hope I answered your question.
I have 2 small questions, if you permit.
Sure.
Again, on the Agile Fluency zone, for focusing, delivering, and optimizing, it's very tangible, the explanation. However, for the strengthening, when we speak about the greater good of the organization, it's too vague. So yeah. Is there something to
absolutely
say?
So this model is, we want to keep it based on practical experiences. So some of the language makes sense for businesses. So yeah, it does become a little bit more vague because we don't have all the recommendations right now. Strengthening zone is very much experimental, but we are finding companies that are already starting to thrive in those areas. examples of those companies that are they are practicing sociocracy, right? Those are smaller companies, companies that are practicing beyond budgeting, companies that are, they've evolved to a new level that is going beyond agile, or, if I use that term loosely. So one resource I would recommend is called Bossa Nova, BOSSANOVA. Bossa Nova actually dives a little bit deeper into what that optimizing or what that strengthening zone looks like and where things are heading next. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes,
You had another question
indeed.
too, right?
The second question, yes, the second question is about, I didn't understand what you mean, what time to invest in the agile transformation. Understanding it's a journey, and usually it's not just we invest in 6 months of agile transformation. It does not mean anything to invest in 6 months in agile transformation.
Yeah.
So what do you mean
Well,
exactly by this question?
we want to look at from the team's lens. So this is a wonderful question. So the team within engineering discipline is looking at, so this is the engineer's eyes looking at business goals. And what I mean by investment, so say, the team hasn't really learned how to do retrospectives. It's kind of a boring meeting. So retrospectives is a process thing. Maybe refactoring is a better example. The team thinks that test-driven development is something that they need to become fluent at. But before that, they need to really become fluent in refactoring, right? So, and if they are not greenfield, they have an existing code base, it's not like something they can do overnight. So you have to deliberately create that space for them. A very good example would be mob programming. Now, mob programming, what happens in mob programming? You create that dojo, you do this practice again and again until it becomes second nature to you. And that also, some of my coaches, friends who do mob programming, they say, I need you to commit to 12 weeks, right? Until I know for sure that you can do it on your own. So those are the time frame investments are those molecular level practices that the team needs to become fluent in. And without creating that space, saying that, we're going to have no bugs or we're going to be doing test-driven development, without understanding that it takes time, learning takes time, and not everything requires a lot of time. So for example, retrospective is not going to take a year to master or become fluent in. Does that answer your question a little bit?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, right. So let's move on to, and please, if there's more questions, keep them coming, and we'll bring them in at the end of it with the question and answers part. So I've used this term a few times, fluency, and very specifically fluency versus maturity. Maturity happens with age. Fluency requires deliberately practicing something. What do I mean by that? So fluency is routine, smooth, skillful ease. Something you can do without being told how to do it, without being reminded how to do it. It just comes naturally to you. What do you do automatically without thinking? Now, my metaphor for fluency is riding a bicycle. And I'm hoping at least many of you would know how to ride a bicycle. And I was just having this chat with a friend recently, and they said, yeah, I haven't rode my bicycle in the past 6 months. So my question is to that, you have not been riding your bicycle the past 6 months, but if you picked up your bicycle, would you be able to ride or even fall off? I say, of course I'll be able to ride. How about 5 years from now? Of course I'll be able to ride. But can somebody remember the struggles when they were learning to ride? And how many times they were falling off? The training wheels, holding off, a lot of things. And, I have to look at my balance, I have to hold my handle, I have to do this and that, this over-processing. But we want to be in a state where it becomes fluent. Now, riding the bicycle has also a little bit more customization to it. What is the purpose for you to ride the bicycle? Are you riding to commute? Are you riding for leisure? You just want to go on the trail? Are you trying to compete in extreme sports and do some BMX tricks? Are you aspiring to go and ride on a cross country like Tour de France? So the type of equipment you use, the type of practices you do will vary depending on your needs. So now I'm going to open up the poll for you to pull up your phone and let's find out what are your other metaphors for fluency. What else can you think of? Like riding a bicycle is something you can become fluent in. What else can you become fluent in? So for those of you who've been joining later, the code, you have to go to menti.com, preferably on your phone, and put in the code 860426. And Kimmy, just a quick tech check. Are they seeing the screen for Menti?
Yes.
Okay.
And Ahmed, if you could keep an eye on your audio, I know you might not know, but some people are saying that it's fading in and out.
Oh, I'm sorry. Speaking in public, yes. Definitely you can speak in public. Muscle memory. Well, what about like, say, cooking? For example, cooking is something you can become fluent in. Tacos? Not sure if making tacos is what you meant. So what are other, so language, yes, learning a language you can become fluent in. Driving a car, rock climbing, I can see that. And if you have never done it before, there's maybe some work to be done, but definitely you can focus on the right locations. Golf, easy riding. So I'm seeing some that are probably an explanation of fluency, but not necessarily habits that will make you fluent in that particular thing. I'm seeing freestyling, maybe that's rapping, right? Planning a party using chopsticks, absolutely. Beatboxing, sure. Brushing my teeth, and I hope it doesn't require a lot of practice to become fluent in that. Confidence, easy riding. Yeah, so these are great examples. Coloring, baking a birthday cake. These are great examples of what the metaphors are. And just like you can think, well, what is the time I need to invest? For example, I need to bake a birthday cake, but I've never baked before. What are the tools I need? What are the videos I can watch? Where can I practice? How many times can I practice before I get confidence that I can really, really become good at baking a birthday cake, right? So those are the things that you have to think about. So I see 20 people in, maybe some folks are still having difficulty coming in. And if you are, let me know. But let's see if we can switch gears to see a little bit of an application of this. Are you guys all ready for a quiz? Can give me a thumbs up or a reaction if you can see this. All right, awesome. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to activate quiz, and the speed of your response matters in who will come on top. So why don't you go ahead and give yourself a name, a funny name or a real name, whatever you like, and we are going to track scores. So I am seeing 19 people join, 20, 21. So I think this is good enough, and we can start the quiz. 22, should I wait or should I just start? So you'll have 15 seconds to see the question and find the best answer. And at the end, it will tell us who scored fastest and most quickly, or who was the highest scorer. All right, I got somebody drop off. I think we should be able to start now. All right, I'm starting the quiz now. Answer fast to get more points. All right. Most people said next slide. Look at that. All right, good. Let's ask the second question. All right. Does it make sense why the answer, what particular answer was chosen as correct? Right, last question, let's see, and then we'll find out who won. Ah, look at that. Guys are awesome. All right, let's see who was the leaderboard. So looks like Master Vindu is the high scorer. Who's Master Vindu? I'm just curious. Can somebody who's Master Vindu unmute themselves?
Donald Phillips.
All right, well, congratulations, Master Vindu. You have shown your mastery of the quiz. Awesome.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to go back to the presentation. All right, so let's switch gears a little bit. Why do Agile teams plateau? And this is a pattern that we've seen again and again, and through the model and through our own interactions, it matches other people as well. And this is a funny thing I hear. I mean, I'm in the software space. I hear this very commonly. For a Java developer with 10 years of experience, there's 3 years of learning and 7 years of coasting. Now that's awful. So what happens? Why does it become same and not really, they're not taking them to the next level? Because it is kind of natural. So there's a danger of going on autopilot. Now there's a professor named Anders Ericsson, and he's done this study, of a very famous study, where he found that doctors, physicians with 20 years of experience who've come to a point of acceptable level of performance, like good enough, this is good enough, I'm fine, were actually equal in their skill and error rates, mistakes, avoidable medical mistakes, with doctors who only have 5 years of experience, who were pushing themselves to say, hey, what else can I do? How can I get better? So this is fascinating, because maturity models will say that the person with 20 years of experience who's performing should be better. And the 5-year person with the 5-year experience should actually thrive to become the 20 years. And we say not necessarily. And not all practices are created equal. Now, some of you may know this reference. There's a famous movie, The Karate Kid. Wax on, wax off. So we take that metaphor about deliberate practice. How do you develop skills for which effective training and techniques already exist? How do you build on previously acquired skills? And a master would know, or your coach or your peer or your whatever mentoring mechanism you have, that is doing this external observations and giving you clear and immediate feedback. And another thing we find interesting is very much grounded in cognitive science, is that it stretches the learner's comfort zone. So it's not going to be always fun, but definitely you have to push yourself. You have to take yourself to the next level. Saturation and this stagnation is a very common problem. Now, some of you may be thinking, all right, all of this is making connection as an individual, but I'm not so quite sure how does that apply to teams. So what about teams? Now, we know that teams themselves have their own characteristics. There are spoken and unspoken working agreements among them. Their interactions, how they behave with each other, the team dynamics, the emotions, the style of working. And that creates that the team has its own characteristics. This entity has its own characteristics that are different from the individuals that make them up. So what we like to adhere to is a very specific definition of a team. A small group of people, although, this is Ahmed's opinion, and you can classify that as Ahmed's personal opinions. I'm not very much, I'm not religious about the idea of Dunbar number and the 2 pizza teams, but I do focus a little bit more about what ties this team together. If there's a need to swarm, do they have a common purpose? What is their common calling? And how do they impact each other? How do they hold each other accountable? And for that, if that is strong, then actually the two pizza team, which is a good mechanism starting out, is not really not something that you need to religiously follow. What we find the mistake is there are people who call themselves teams, but they only get together once every 2 weeks, once a month, once a week. And that's what we call a working group, not a team. So there's a model by Katzenbach and Smith, where they say on the Y and the X-axis, there's a team effectiveness scale. On the Y-axis, there's performance impact. And as you go from working group to what most organizations struggle with is a pseudo team, or teams within teams, that, yeah, these 3 people are also in my team, but I really don't need to talk to them. Well, are they really quite a team? And if you are, the organization is investing in training, in CI/CD pipelines, in tooling, in processes, and culture, well, they need to really, really think about the political capital that they need to spend to get them to the level where they need to be. And so there's a model that you can use to understand, well, what exactly is a team? So what I want you to take away from this is teams are complex adaptive systems. Does anybody recognize the background picture? Anyone in the background? What is the picture of? Can anybody say?
Birds.
Birds. What type of birds? Anyone? And I'm pretty comfortable with silence.
Swallows.
Yes, small birds.
Swallows.
Well, so they're swallows could be, but they are starlings. And I don't know if there's a difference. Starlings are birds that go in formations, and they make these. So if you ever look online, just for soothing purposes, there are murmurations, and you find these thousands of birds that are just ebbing and flowing and creating these beautiful patterns. And those patterns are not just for beauty; they're actually predator prevention mechanisms. So hawks and falcons, and there's a lot of predators that will try to eat them, but with these formations, they don't come any close. And what you find is for them to align on these directions, there's a lot of interesting things going on. And there's a simulation called BOIDS, B-O-I-D-S. The software developers were from Boston, so that's how they spell birds in Boston, BOIDS, B-O-I-D-S. What they found out was they coded these, simulated the starling's behavior, and they created 3 simple rules. Match the speed of your closest neighbor, do not collide, and keep going forward. So, and that created the same type of murmurations in the software. Now, what I want to also say here is, like, some people may say, well, I want to be in the enterprise space and all this. Well, if you are really paying attention, there's a saying in complexity application that the macro is in the micro. Your teams are going to be mirrors of the organizations. If you are seeing dysfunctions in teams, that's really just a reflection of how the organizational or hierarchical structures are established. There's much more detail to it, but I will invite you to look a little bit more into understanding complex adaptive systems and systems theory, and how do you that apply and practice. And there's a lot of methods and models for you to apply that. Martin Fowler has said a very important thing in this aspect, and I want to quote him that as far as fluency is concerned, fluency for a team versus individual is that's how a team develops software when they're under pressure. If a VP or a director is running down your throat and you throw away pair programming, mob programming, because we can't afford to do that, just do cavalcading, get it out of the row. That is not fluency, because fluency means always. It's habitual. It's less about skills, it's more about habit. Now, I want to switch gears. So there's, again, this is another big eye exam slide. Maybe I won't share the benefits from what the organization needs to understand. When you make these investments, when you make these practices come alive, what are the benefits you get? But there's definitely a lot in the Agile Fluency Suite that I found useful to say that language and can bridge the gap between technology and business, or technology and product. Some of the, yeah? Oh, sorry, I thought I heard somebody. So in all of these, so Hisham said it correctly. Optimizing is a little bit more difficult compared to others, but we have practices emerging in there too. But we found a very strong correlation between certain type of practices and the type of zone the team needs to be in. And these are examples. There's many more. There's so much in the tool chest. But just to give you an idea why this is concrete, because if somebody comes to you and says, just be agile, just have the agile mindset, there's a little bit of that hand motion, hand waving motion going on there. What really comes alive, if you're worried about mindset, is practices. So practices is what makes your agile mindset come alive. Otherwise, it's going to be just hope, and we all know hope is not quite a strategy. Another busy slide, and we will share the slide deck with you. I'm not sure how Cami will post it, but if we'll maybe find out a way. But I'm happy to share the slide deck with all of you. There's a lot going on here, but what I want you to focus on is each one has a time frame associated with it, and each one is a certain type of smells or practices you can see, and what are the type of investments. That is kind of the gist of the model. So I invite you to go back and watch the 10-minute video and see how it can connect the dots for you. Switching gears one more time. So I want to talk about the application on how I use it. So I work for a large corporation. I've also consulted for smaller companies and startups. What I do is a lot of time call it incognito. This is how I make sense of when I'm coaching teams, by modeling them as systems and by applying different tools. And I may not say it outright as this is I'm applying the Agile Fluency diagnostic, but it definitely gives me the edge where feedback on all the other mechanisms that are in place are validating that what I'm applying is actually making sense. And before I give you an example of a team that I coached, I want to say this from George Box. Essentially, all models are wrong, but some are useful. And this happens to be a very, very useful model. This is an example of a team that needed to be a delivering team. And you notice that so the three colors, if you see the first color, the second color, and the third color, they are associated with observations on each of the zones for that team. And we grade this out because we found out through conversations with leaders, and there's a tool that helps you build those conversations, that this was kind of an overinvestment for them. And although they are approaching fluency in some of those practices, once you apply the model, we really need to focus on this zone, which means we need to become fluent. And as we create that cycle for them, quarter over quarter, fortnight over fortnight, iteration over iteration, we are trying to become more fluent in the areas that we need to focus on. So they already were fluent in certain practices in terms of backlog, but they really were struggling with other things, building Slack, spending too much time on maintenance versus building new features. And what are the concrete practices that we need to go back to management and ask for them to create the conditions, invest in training, invest in pipelines, different things. But then we have signal from the actual team that validates in their language that this is what the right step forward would be. Another broader, full-blown Agile transformation examples are from New Relic and from a company in Iran called Omid. And there are links for you, but you can see how a whole transformation was run through the Agile Fluency suite of things. So I'll pause here. Does anybody have questions so far before I move on to the last leg of our journey? Kemi, are you seeing anything that is looking at right now, or should I just?
Not at the moment.
All right. So what else? Agile Fluency Suite also has a simulation called the Agile Fluency Game, which is actually one of the things that I probably overuse. And with the whole pandemic, we're trying to find ways to do some of those mini workshops online. I've road tested it with a few people. Some other people are trying different things. What we're doing is we're just adapting. In this adaptation is more about us sensing and responding. But when we do come back to the physical world, this is another tool that's very useful. And just to share one more, in the past, There was a thing called the Agile Engineering Fluencies, which is there's a GitHub link that you can play with this model. It's very much in alignment with the Agile Fluency model, which is more business focused. This is more software engineering focused, but still the same applications and same concrete paths exist here. Now, I know we're at our 1 o'clock mark, and I want to open it up for question and answers pretty soon. This is further research for you. Join, watch the 10-minute video, read the white paper, join the community, sign up for the newsletter, connect with other facilitators, find out opportunities to play the game. And there are some books that are very, very useful. One of the things that is getting me excited is this book called Team Topologies, which is very much from a completely different group, validating what we've known to be true in terms of how you do organizational design for the teams. And there's a whole community of the organizational design forum who are doing beautiful work outside of Agile space, but there's a lot of adaptation from that. So there's a lot of cross-pollination going on, but definitely a lot of useful things there for you to go in and connect and enrich your own coaching journeys. So I'll pause here and I'll stop sharing as well to see what questions do you have?
There is a question here. Can you share about your play test of taking the Agile Fluency game online or virtually? That was from Donna Phillips.
So there are several, so not the whole game. So it is a Euro game. So there's a lot of rules, a lot of moving parts. It's kind of simulated chaos, but it is a very good representation of real world. So I find that very useful. So what I've done is taken one of the mini workshops and created a mural board. And on the mural, so if you people are not familiar with Mural or Miro, these are whiteboarding tools, and you can build, same sort of mechanism. Instead of using a flip chart, you're basically using the online board. The cards are preloaded, and then there's facilitation rules that you use. I am planning to do some more testing. If you sign up to my newsletter, I will probably make an announcement there when I will make it public. My colleague Jim York and I were planning to do this in Agile Games New England, which got canceled. So definitely we're experimenting with things, but since they're a little bit of an experimental nature, we're not opening it up for everybody. And we're definitely talking about the whole game in a digital format, because some of the tactile thing, high touch things won't be available to do in the same tooling. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Welcome. Anyone else?
Mural is another whiteboard where we can use it virtually.
Yes, Mural and Miro.com, M-I-R-O. They're both very, very useful, especially in the new world we live in right now. Some people have actually gamified through Trello as well, by the way. But again, if you're curious about those things, there's a whole Agile Games Google group. There's a lot of good stuff going on there if you want to hang on to that.
I used Trello for my retrospective, wherein I capture all my previous ideas where the team shared with this. That gives a clear, transparent. It's like a Kanban board for them.
Absolutely.
And personally also use it.
Absolutely, it's wonderful. And remember that to get away from that physical space, you may have to bring in a lot more tools to keep the interactivity up. So for example, I'm introducing multiple things here, right? Just to keep the engagement high, because the attention span falls shorter on an online setting versus a physical setting. Is there any other question?
Yes, we do have two questions around metrics. And the first one is from David. How do you incorporate metrics into this so that you know where each team stands and how close they are to their destination zone? And I think another question was from Julia, and I think it's around metric and the fluency graphic example. How is fluency evaluated?
So, okay, so there's two different questions. First is about metrics, because metrics can be done wrong, and most commonly are done wrong, and they can be done right in a more positive manner. What I invite you to do is, because I've kind of showed some of those charts, if you go to Martin Fowler's website, martinfowler.com, and somebody can type that in chat, you can look for the white paper. In the white paper, we talk about what is the return of investment? What is the type of productivity measures? What are the things that we can observe that can tell us for sure that it's working or not? And not to blame and punish people, but find ways to track, because tracking is not a bad thing, but a lot of time it's done to pay bonuses, performance evaluation. So there's a lot of bad in it, but with caution, you can actually implement metrics very, very well. So that was one question. And I invite you to go to Martin Fowler's website, read the white paper, agileFluency.org, and download the ebook, and we'll talk in more detail about that. The second question was about, what was the second question about?
Evaluation of.
Yeah. So the way we do evaluation, there's a training program that, so you have to go through a quite intense training to become a facilitator. When you become a facilitator, what you're doing is you're doing a special retrospective. Recommended is quarterly basis, but it could be longer. And when the trained facilitator comes in, there is a way to make sure that we collect everybody's individual opinions versus having somebody say something and drive the conversation all in one direction. So we gather that, we have a data collection part of it, and then we bring it back to the model, and we bring up, and it's a graphical tool where you chart it out and look for patterns. And eventually you want to capture what they're saying and take it back into a model that we currently use Excel for, that we put the data, we plug that data in. And essentially we're using the same language the team is using to amplify based on what good looks like, and plug it in and see and go back to the team. Hey, this is what we heard from you, and this is what we've captured. Do we have your permission to share it with management? And if the team says like, no, this kind of not quite, so we still give them an opportunity to make sure that we're capturing the right way. And then we take it back to folks who are, or, to hold the budget of different trainings and investments and software, or whatever that need is. So it's a special retrospective. It requires a little bit of a skill, but it is done in a way that's crowdsourced versus check the box, whether you're mature or not mature. So it's a little bit more intense, but I definitely find it very valuable. And there's plenty of opportunity for you to learn that as well from agilefluency.org. Right, is there any other questions? All right, so maybe we can switch gears to a retrospective for today's session. All right, so I invite you to come back to menti.com. And share with me, this is for me, I'm collecting your feedback. In one word, how would you describe today's session? Eye-opener. Hopefully in a good way, helpful, interesting. Inspiration. So I feel like people may have to go back to, so I'm seeing a lot of people dropping off too, but hopefully you guys can stick along a little bit longer. Right, engaging, good overview, inspiration. So I have 7 people. Is that representative of how many people we have on call as well? Informative, great analogies. Thank you. Good overview, great, useful, white paper, lots of questions answered, informative. Once I get to 15, maybe I'll call it and move to the next question. I respect your time, maybe give you your time back. All right, so I think we're good enough. I love that, and I'll plug these in the slide deck as well for you to share back with you. All right, the next question I have for you is, what is one thing you want to remember from today's session? What is your learning? What is one thing you want to remember from today's session? I love that. It's not a maturity model. To build fluency. I'm curious. Different goals for different companies and teams, absolutely. What is fluency? Practice makes perfect. Not just practice, but deliberate practice makes perfect. How teams work under pressure, different orgs, different agile needs, absolutely. And somebody had asked the question about How does it work for admin teams? Maybe I'll invite them because I may have an answer for that as well if I understand the question a little better. Fluency is like a bus map, importance of fluency. And hopefully you guys go and attend the Ask Me Anything session, EMA, for Diana and James Shore. Bring your tough questions. I mean, you'll find so much better. Both of them are amazing. So you'll learn a lot. Go and attend that Ask Me Anything session. Come with your tough questions and see how they answer them. All right, awesome. So I think that is my end of polling. Why don't I switch back to anything else that was on my deck? Well, I wanted to thank you all. And the only request I have for me, is to sign up for my newsletter. I blog at agile-7.com. It will make my day if you guys sign up. And if there's any announcement on game plays or experimental plays, I will definitely make an announcement there before anywhere else. So with that, I am going to stop sharing. And I did say the person who asked the question about admin teams, are they still online or have they dropped off? If you can kindly unmute yourself. Okay, maybe they have dropped off. Okay, so
they've dropped off.
Maybe, and I wasn't sure what they meant by admin teams. So what I found a similar question is, what if you are like a legal shop or a company that's doing manufacturing? Really, you need software, but software is not what you primarily do. And for them, focusing is good enough to have some structures to visualize their work. Kanban, flow system, looking at cycle time, looking at lead time, building that muscle, even that can be beneficial. It could be a killer feature for that group. So not everybody, so if I go to a legal team and they're trying to just get better at managing their work and they say, yeah, you need a CI/CD pipeline, but that does not make sense for them. So always look at what the needs are and what are the type of things. And there are places where you may not even apply Agile and you're saying, whoa, what is he saying? There's a guy who's done Wardley mapping. I really love Wardley mapping. In Wardley mapping, he talks about there are places where Six Sigma is good enough. And you don't need to apply Agile. I'm a Scrum expert. And I can tell you there are places I don't know how to make Scrum work because there is really no product development going on. So sometimes we want to shift them to something else that may be more useful. Finding out what's fit for purpose and gives benefit is a better conversation than trying to go back with the hammer and hitting it on the nail. All right, so I think that is all for me. Kemi, I thank you all, and Kemi, back to you for any announcements.
Thank you so much, Ahmed. That was a fantastic session. I enjoyed it. I played the game I think 2 years ago, but I didn't tie it to coaching or I was just enjoying the game. So it was quite nice to tie it back to a coaching skill. I would like to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon. Our next webinar will be next month, and we're going to be bringing another wonderful session to you. So we hope you join. So thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day or evening, wherever you are. Thank you very much, Ahmed, for joining us. It's been great.
Absolutely. So we can stop recording and I can stay back if there's any other lingering questions.